Watching the Star Wars cartoon shows as they air can be a bit like preparing a pasta dish. The finished product is going to taste pretty good, but you still have to watch a lot of pasta boil. So while I adore both the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, they have slow and uneven starts which take a while to finally ramp up from merely fine to great. Resistance follows in this animated Star Wars tradition, and like its predecessors, I finished the first season wanting more and excited for the future. Set right before The Force Awakens, Star Wars Resistance follows Kazuda Xiono, New Republic pilot turned Resistance spy sent to discover the First Order's plans for the Colossus, a refueling station located in the Outer Rim. Aiding him on his mission are BB-8, CB-23, and Jarek Yeager, a local mechanic who once fought for the rebellion on Jakku. Rounding out the main cast are Jarek's two employees, a straightforward to-a-fault Niku Vozo, and the aspiring pilot Tamara Rivora. Together, this motley crew forms a solid core for the show to build around, with Tam's character arc in particular being one of the best in the show so far. Unfortunately, Kaz is the weakest link in the group in spite of Christopher Sean's solid performance because Kazuda's character is written as overly naive. It's hard for me to believe that someone could be in their early 20s, a New Republic Military Academy graduate, and a squadron leader while also comically clumsy and dense. Granted, after the recent college admissions scandal and the fact that Kaz is supposed to be the child of wealth and privilege, I'm more willing to believe that a New Republic senator could buy their idiot son into graduating from any educational institution. On the bright side, Kaz's clumsiness is in service of physical comedy reminiscent of the slapstick of the Three Stooges or Charlie Chaplin. It's not very elaborate, and I am glad it's there. Kaz also grows into his own as a spy and leader over the course of the season, so the initial naivety does get tempered a little bit, and even though he's a big dummy, or maybe because of it, I still like the character a lot. Unfortunately, Resistance tends to underexplore its supporting cast, if they're even explored at all. And that's a shame since the colorful denizens of the Colossus contribute a lot to making it a place people call home, but the show chooses to rely on the broader political conflict and our knowledge of The Force Awakens to provide most of the stakes. The best example of this are the Aces, a group of 5 hotshot racers who also provide security for the Colossus. We get just enough time with them to get a broad feel for their personalities, but the show only invests in fleshing out Tora Doza and Hype Phazon. Their motivations and relationships play a role in the main story, but the rest of the Aces don't participate as prominently. As a result, the other 3 Aces feel like the bounty hunters from The Empire Strikes Back, wickedly cool window dressing that captures the imagination. There are also a few subplots that don't find any meaningful resolution, or are introduced in one episode only to never get brought up again. To give Resistance credit, the show does introduce these characters and plot threads in a way that doesn't interfere with the main story, while still allowing the show to build off of them in future seasons. It's just that, right now, these story beats feel like unrealized potential rather than exciting future storylines. Overall, having charming characters and storylines you wish the show spent more time on is a nice problem to have, but less nice is the slow and steady pacing which contributes a lot to that problem. The main thing hamstringing the pacing is an information gap between the audience and the rest of the cast caused by both how the show reveals information and when it's set. As I mentioned before, Resistance is set right before The Force Awakens, with the first season's finale running parallel to the climax of the film. This means if you've seen all the films up to The Last Jedi and read the final arc of the Poe Dameron comic, the core mystery of why does the First Order want the Colossus fades away with a very straightforward answer before the end of the first episode. But that wouldn't be so bad if the show didn't also reveal important information weeks before any of the main characters figured things out. So the problem Resistance faces because of its chronology gets repeated over and over again for a lot of the smaller intervening mysteries. As a result, it feels like each episode steadily chugs towards their predictable conclusions like an AT-AT barreling down towards Hoth's shield generator. Ultimately, this is perfectly fine for a children's show, and it's a little similar to Gen 1 Transformers in that regard, which makes it a decently bingeable viewing experience that doesn't demand 100% of your attention. Luckily, the root of this problem is tied to the first season, so any future episodes will most likely explore the events concurrent with and after The Last Jedi. This gives the show a lot of room to breathe, and I look forward to seeing what the showrunners can do with the space to spread their wings. And speaking of wings, I almost neglected to mention the best part of the show, its fusion of old-school World War II fighter pilot serials with high-speed racing cartoons. I've always loved the big space battles and dogfights in Star Wars, and Resistance provides a lot of fun moments in that department. In particular, Episode 9, the platform classic, is my favorite episode of the entire season, and it holds its own with the better standalone episodes of the other animated Star Wars shows. Even if you're not totally interested in watching the whole show, I definitely recommend watching at least that episode, as it has all the best stuff Resistance has to offer in its 22-minute runtime. And that's what really kept me watching Star Wars Resistance every week. When the show is firing on all cylinders, it stands side to side with both Rebels and the Clone Wars, setting itself apart with its focus on espionage and starfighter racing. It's just that the first season isn't always going full speed ahead in favor of a steadier pace more suited for a young and distracted audience. But the future's bright because Resistance puts in the work to at least give us a glimpse at compelling characters and intriguing storylines, so I give the first season of Star Wars Resistance a CB 23 out of 5. Thanks for watching.